Standing at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's impossible not to feel a rush of awe. How could a civilization thousands of years ago, without cranes, computers, or even the wheel, construct something so colossal, so precise? It still defies explanation today. The stones stacked here weigh more than elephants, fitted together so tightly you can't slip a credit card between them. And this is just one of countless ancient marvels scattered across our planet, each one a testament to ingenuity that borders on the miraculous. Think about it: no bulldozers, no steel beams, no power tools, just human hands, rudimentary tools, and minds brilliant enough to turn imagination into reality. From the towering temples of Angkor Wat to the mysterious stone spheres of Costa Rica, our ancestors left behind puzzles that modern engineers still struggle to solve. How did they move multi-ton blocks across miles of rugged terrain? How did they align structures with the stars down to the fraction of a degree? And perhaps most haunting of all, why did they pour generations of labor into these monuments, knowing they might never live to see them finished? That's the mystery we're unraveling today. Over the next 30 examples, we'll journey from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of South America, exploring the mind-bending megastructures built by ancient hands. Some were temples to the gods, others tombs for kings, but all share one thing in common: they were impossible until they weren't. So whether you're a history buff, an engineering enthusiast, or just someone who loves a good mystery, prepare to question everything you thought you knew about the limits of human potential. Because these aren't just ruins, they're a challenge echoing across the centuries. If they could do this, what else are we underestimating about the past? The Great Pyramid of Giza isn't just old, it's precise. Built over 4,500 years ago, this colossal structure stands with corners aligned almost perfectly to the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, with an error margin of less than 1/15 of a single degree. To achieve that kind of accuracy today, we'd need laser-guided surveying equipment. Yet somehow, the ancient Egyptians managed it with nothing more than ropes, wooden tools, and the night sky as their guide. Then there's the sheer scale of the stones. The pyramid is made of an estimated 2.5 million blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, equivalent to 50 mid-sized cars. And here's the real kicker: those blocks weren't just dumped in place. They were cut with such precision that even now, after millennia of erosion, the gaps between them are often less than the width of a razor blade. So how did they do it? Theories abound. Some suggest ramps zigzagging up the pyramid's sides, while others propose internal spiral systems hidden beneath the outer casing. Then there's the mystery of how they transported these stones. Recent discoveries hint at wetting the sand to reduce friction, making it easier to drag sleds loaded with limestone across the desert. But even with that trick, moving a single 80-ton block would have required hundreds of workers pulling in perfect unison. And let's not forget the pyramid's interior, a maze of chambers, shafts, and passageways designed with mathematical precision. The king's chamber, for instance, is built with granite slabs so heavy that their placement defies logic. How did they lift stones weighing dozens of tons to heights of nearly 200 feet? Perhaps the most haunting question of all is why they built it with such impossible perfection. Was it purely for Pharaoh Khufu's tomb, or did it serve some greater astronomical or spiritual purpose? The answers are lost to time, but the pyramid remains, whispering its secrets to anyone willing to listen. Moving from the desert sands of Egypt to the rolling green plains of England, we encounter another ancient mystery that has baffled scholars for centuries: Stonehenge. This iconic ring of standing stones seems almost alien against the landscape, like a giant's game of dominoes frozen in time. But what makes Stonehenge truly remarkable isn't just its age, over 4,500 years old, but the incredible effort it took to build it with nothing but muscle, rope, and sheer determination. The largest of these stones, the sarsens, tower up to 30 feet tall and weigh as much as 50 tons each. But the real puzzle lies with the smaller bluestones, some weighing up to 4 tons, which were dragged all the way from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a staggering distance of over 150 miles. Picture that, no wheels, no beasts of burden strong enough to haul them, just teams of people sliding these massive rocks across rivers, through forests and over hills. Some theories suggest they might have used a combination of sledges, rollers, and even boats to navigate waterways, but the exact method remains hotly debated. Then there's the precision. The stones weren't just plopped down randomly, they were arranged with a keen understanding of astronomy. During the summer solstice, the rising sun aligns perfectly with the heel stone, casting its light directly into the heart of the circle. Other stones mark the positions of the moon and stars, suggesting Stonehenge might have been an ancient calendar, a celestial observatory, or even a sacred space for rituals tied to the cycles of nature. But why go to such lengths? Was it a temple for sun worship, a healing site, or a burial ground? Excavations have uncovered human remains, some bearing signs of injury or illness, hinting at possible rituals or pilgrimages for healing. Others argue its alignment points to something grander, a bridge between earth and sky, a place where the living could commune with the divine. With no written records left behind, the true purpose of Stonehenge remains one of history's most tantalizing riddles. What's undeniable is the ambition behind it. Building Stonehenge would have required generations of labor, a unified vision spanning lifetimes, and that's the real wonder, not just the how but the why. In a world without modern tools or technology, our ancestors looked at the sky, at the land, and at the stones, and saw something worth moving mountains for. Or in this case, bluestones. Now, picture a bronze giant standing guard over a bustling harbor, its gleaming form so tall that ships could pass beneath its legs. This was the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and a feat of engineering that pushed the limits of what was possible over 2,000 years ago. Towering at over 100 feet, roughly the height of the Statue of Liberty's pedestal, this massive statue of the sun god Helios wasn't just a symbol of pride for the people of Rhodes. It was a staggering display of ingenuity, built without the benefit of modern metallurgy or construction techniques. The most mind-bending part, the Colossus wasn't carved from stone like so many other ancient monuments. It was cast in bronze, a metal that had to be melted, poured, and shaped in sections, each one a puzzle piece in this towering figure. Imagine the process: workers heating furnaces to extreme temperatures, pouring molten bronze into clay molds to create the statue's skin, then carefully fitting those plates over an iron and stone framework. Some historians believe the statue was assembled piece by piece, with scaffolding rising around it as each section was added, like building a giant from the feet up. But here's the catch: bronze isn't lightweight. The Colossus likely weighed as much as several hundred tons, meaning every joint, every connection had to be meticulously planned to prevent collapse. And yet, despite its sheer mass, the statue stood for only 56 years before an earthquake toppled it. The ruins lay where they fell for centuries, becoming a tourist attraction in their own right, with visitors marveling at the size of its broken fingers, each one reportedly larger than most statues of the time. Why such a short lifespan? Some speculate the statue's height made it vulnerable to high winds, while others point to the earthquake's sheer force. But the real mystery lies in how it was built at all. Without cranes or welding, how did they hoist those heavy bronze plates into place? How did they ensure stability on the uneven ground of the harbor? Even the statue's pose is debated. Popular culture imagines it straddling the harbor entrance, but modern scholars suggest it likely stood on a pedestal near the water, one hand shielding its eyes as it gazed seaward. The Colossus may be gone, but its legacy endures. It proved that ancient engineers could dream big, working with materials and methods that still impress us today. And in its brief existence, it accomplished something extraordinary. It turned metal, earth, and fire into a symbol so awe-inspiring, we're still talking about it millennia later. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, just the name, conjures images of lush greenery cascading from terraces high above the desert, an oasis defying the harsh Mesopotamian sun. But here's the twist: unlike the pyramids or Stonehenge, we're not even certain these gardens existed. No ruins have been definitively tied to them, and ancient Babylonian records are curiously silent about this so-called wonder. So why do we keep talking about them? Because the idea of the gardens, whether myth or reality, reveals just how obsessed ancient civilizations were with bending nature to their will. Let's start with the descriptions we do have. Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus wrote of towering terraces, some say as high as 75 feet, stacked like a wedding cake and overflowing with trees, vines, and flowers. The gardens supposedly relied on an intricate irrigation system, with water drawn from the Euphrates River and pumped upward using a chain of screws or buckets, a staggering feat for a society without modern hydraulics. Imagine the labor, workers hauling water day and night to keep plants alive in a climate where temperatures could scorch the earth. But here's where the mystery deepens. Babylon's location in modern-day Iraq is flat and arid, with no natural hills to support terraced gardens. Some scholars argue the gardens might have been built in Nineveh, not Babylon, and credited to the wrong king. Others suggest they were purely poetic exaggeration, a symbol of royal power so vivid, it blurred the line between fact and legend. The real marvel isn't just whether the gardens existed, but how they could have. Building a garden in a desert would require more than just water. It would demand an understanding of soil, drainage, and botany far ahead of its time. Recent theories propose the gardens might have used a layered structure of reeds, tar, and stone to prevent water leakage, with plants chosen for their ability to thrive in artificial conditions. Picture it, a vertical rainforest engineered from the ground up, its roots never touching natural earth. So why would a king go to such lengths? Ancient texts hint that the gardens were a gift from King Nebuchadnezzar to his homesick wife, who missed the mountains of her homeland. Whether true or not, the story speaks to something universal: the human desire to conquer the impossible, to create beauty where none should exist, and that's the lasting legacy of the Hanging Gardens. They challenge us to ask, does it matter if they were real when the dream alone was enough to inspire millennia of wonder? Rising over 400 feet into the sky, the Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a beacon. It was a titan of engineering, a structure so advanced it remained the tallest man-made building for centuries after its completion. Built around 2,300 years ago on the island of Pharos, this wonder of the ancient world did more than guide ships. It redefined what was possible with stone, fire, and human ingenuity. Picture the scene, a flame so bright, reflected by a polished bronze mirror, that sailors could spot its glow from 35 miles out at sea. But how do you build something that colossal without steel, without motors, without anything but muscle and mind? The lighthouse's base was made of massive limestone blocks, some weighing up to 75 tons, equivalent to a dozen elephants. These stones weren't just hauled from nearby quarries. They were precision cut to interlock without mortar, much like the pyramids, creating a foundation sturdy enough to withstand the Mediterranean's relentless waves. Workers likely transported them on wooden sledges, sliding them across logs greased with animal fat to reduce friction. But here's the real marvel, lifting those blocks to dizzying heights. Ancient accounts describe a spiraling ramp built inside the lighthouse's core, allowing teams to drag stones upward in a continuous loop, layer by layer. Others suggest a system of counterweights and pulleys, though no records confirm it. Either way, the logistics boggle the mind, each stone placed with care, each tier rising higher into the salt-stained air. Then there's the mirror. Historical texts claim it could magnify the lighthouse's fire into a beam visible far beyond the horizon. Some scholars argue it was a polished metal disc, while others propose a curved glass apparatus, an innovation centuries ahead of its time. The fire itself burned day and night, fueled by wood hauled up an internal shaft, a feat requiring a small army of attendants. Imagine the coordination, keeping the flame alive, adjusting the mirror's angle as ships approached, all while battling wind and weather. But the lighthouse was more than just a tool, it was a symbol. For sailors, it meant survival, a lifeline cutting through the Mediterranean's treacherous currents. For Alexandria, it was a declaration of power, a city so advanced it could tame the sea itself. Even its ruin was dramatic. After standing for over 1,500 years, earthquakes finally toppled it, scattering its stones into the harbor. Today, divers still find remnants beneath the waves, fragments of a legend that refused to fade. What lingers isn't just the how, but the why. In a world without satellites or GPS, the lighthouse did more than guide ships. It illuminated the very idea of human ambition. And that's the true wonder, not just the stones stacked high, but the minds that dared to reach for the sky. Imagine a temple so magnificent it was burned down twice, once by a man who craved fame, and once by nature itself, only to be rebuilt even grander each time. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus wasn't just a place of worship, it was a spectacle of human ambition, a marble masterpiece that left even ancient travelers breathless. Towering over the city with 127 columns, each standing 60 feet tall, about the height of a 6-story building, this wonder of the ancient world was a testament to what happens when artistry meets sheer determination. The first thing that strikes you about Artemis's temple isn't just its size, but its materials. Built entirely of gleaming white marble, it shimmered under the Mediterranean sun like a mirage. But marble isn't just heavy, it's brittle, prone to cracking under stress. So how did workers quarry, carve, and transport these massive blocks without modern tools? The answer lies in a mix of ingenuity and backbreaking labor. Quarries miles away supplied the stone, where teams used wooden wedges soaked in water to split the marble cleanly. As the wood expanded, it cracked the rock along precise lines, creating slabs that could be shaped with bronze chisels and stone hammers. Transporting those slabs to Ephesus was another puzzle. Some historians believe they were loaded onto barges and floated down rivers, then dragged overland on sledges greased with animal fat. Others suggest a system of rollers and levers, with workers chanting in unison to coordinate the movement of multi-ton blocks. Once on site, the real challenge began, raising those columns. Unlike the pyramids where stones were stacked horizontally, these columns had to be lifted vertically. Ancient accounts describe a combination of earthen ramps and cranes powered by human or animal strength, hoisting each segment into place with ropes woven from hemp or leather. But the temple's brilliance wasn't just in its construction, it was in the details. Each column was adorned with intricate carvings of mythological scenes, their surfaces polished to a mirror-like finish. The roof, made of cedar imported from Lebanon, was supported by beams so precisely fitted they required no nails. And at the heart of it all stood the statue of Artemis herself, draped in gold and ivory, her outstretched arms covered in symbolic carvings of animals and celestial symbols. Why go to such extremes? For the people of Ephesus, the temple wasn't just a religious site, it was a declaration of cultural pride. It drew pilgrims, traders, and scholars from across the ancient world, its courtyards bustling with activity. Even its destruction became legend. When Herostratus torched it in 356 BC, seeking immortality through infamy, the Ephesians rebuilt it with even grander proportions. Then, centuries later, when Goths sacked it, they salvaged the marble for other projects, scattering its legacy across the region. Today, only a single column remains, a lonely sentinel hinting at the temple's former glory. But its influence lingers. The techniques pioneered here, precision stonework, large-scale logistics, and artistic collaboration, echoed through later wonders like the Parthenon. The Temple of Artemis didn't just stand as a monument to a goddess. It stood as proof that beauty and scale could coexist, even in a world without machines. And that's the real lesson. When humans set their minds to something, even the heavens seem within reach. Tucked inside a temple at Olympia, the statue of Zeus wasn't just a religious icon, it was a jaw-dropping illusion. At over 40 feet tall, the seated figure of the king of the gods loomed so large that visitors swore the ceiling would shatter if he ever stood. But here's what made it truly extraordinary. This wasn't carved from marble or cast in bronze like most statues of the era. It was built from plates of gold and ivory, pieced together like divine armor over a hidden skeleton of wood and stone. Imagine the skill required to sculpt something so lifelike at such a scale. Every vein in Zeus's hands, every fold of his robe, rendered in materials that gleamed as if lit from within. The ivory alone was a logistical nightmare. Sourced from African elephants, each tusk had to be soaked, bent, and shaped into thin sheets that could be molded to the statue's frame. Gold leaf, hammered thinner than parchment, was layered over the ivory to create skin that shimmered in the temple's dim light. But the real challenge was structural. Unlike solid stone, ivory and gold are fragile, brittle in cold, prone to warping in heat. The sculptor Phidias solved this by inventing a wooden armature reinforced with iron bars, a framework so precise it allowed the outer layers to expand and contract without cracking. Think of it like an ancient form of climate control, engineered to keep the statue intact through Greece's sweltering summers and damp winters. Then there's the temple itself. Designed to house the statue, the building became part of the spectacle. The roof was supported by towering columns, spaced just wide enough to frame Zeus from every angle. A shallow pool of olive oil at the statue's feet reflected light upward, softening the gold and ivory with a warm glow. Visitors entered in darkness, their eyes adjusting until suddenly Zeus appeared before them, throne draped in ebony and gemstones, his expression both serene and overwhelming. It wasn't just art, it was theater, a carefully staged encounter with the divine. But why go to such lengths? Olympia wasn't a major city, it was a sanctuary, a place where Greeks gathered every 4 years for the Olympic Games. The statue served as a reminder that even in competition, all glory ultimately flowed from the gods. Athletes who came to race, wrestle, or throw javelins would first stand before Zeus, dwarfed by his presence. Some accounts claim the statue even held a small figurine of Nike, the goddess of victory, in its palm, a subtle promise that triumph here carried cosmic weight. The statue's fate only adds to its mystique. After standing for nearly 800 years, it vanished when the temple was destroyed, possibly burned, dismantled, or looted. No fragments remain, leaving us to rely on descriptions and tiny coin depictions. Yet even in absence, it challenges our assumptions. How did artists working 2.5 millennia ago achieve such precision without modern tools? How did they make cold metal and carved tusk feel alive? The statue of Zeus wasn't just a marvel of its time. It was a whisper across the centuries, proof that grandeur isn't bound by the limits of an era. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus wasn't just a tomb, it was a rebellion against death itself. Built around 350 BC for Mausolus, a Persian satrap who ruled like a king, this towering monument blurred the line between architecture and art, rising over 140 feet into the sky like a stone poem to immortality. Imagine a structure so lavish, so dripping with craftsmanship, that the word mausoleum became synonymous with grand tombs forever after. But what makes it truly astonishing isn't just its scale, it's the fact that every inch was carved by hand with a precision that would challenge modern sculptors armed with power tools. Start with the base, a massive rectangular podium built from slabs of gleaming white marble, each one hauled from quarries miles away. These weren't just stacked haphazardly, they were fitted together with dovetail joints, a technique usually reserved for fine woodworking. Picture the labor, workers chiseling grooves into stone blocks weighing several tons, then sliding them together like a colossal puzzle, ensuring the entire structure could withstand earthquakes. On top of this base rose 36 columns, each adorned with life-sized statues of gods, warriors, and mythical beasts, their faces so detailed you could see the strain in their sculpted muscles. The carvings alone were a marvel, friezes wrapped around the structure, depicting scenes so vibrant they seemed to move Amazon warriors clashing with Greeks, chariots racing across stone as if frozen mid-gallop. Artisans used drills tipped with abrasive sand to etch intricate patterns into the marble, a painstaking process where one slip could ruin months of work. Some panels were inlaid with colored glass and precious metals, catching the sunlight like jewelry. And at the very top stood a 25-foot-tall chariot, its wheels carved to appear mid-rotation, pulled by stone horses so lifelike locals swore they'd seen them breathe. But how did they lift these pieces into place? The mausoleum's design suggests a system of ramps and cranes, likely powered by teams of oxen or prisoners of war. The heavier stones might have been raised on wooden sledges, dragged up earthen mounds that were later dismantled. Yet the real mystery lies in the harmony of its parts. 4 different sculptors, each a master of their craft, were hired to decorate each side, yet the styles blend seamlessly. It's as if the stone itself conspired to unify their visions. Why pour such resources into a tomb? Mausolus wasn't just a ruler, he was a man obsessed with legacy. His capital, Halicarnassus, was a melting pot of Greek and Persian culture, and the mausoleum was his final statement, a declaration that even in death he'd tower above ordinary men. And for 16 centuries he did. Earthquakes eventually toppled it, but its influence lingered. Crusaders repurposed its stones for castles, and today, fragments of its friezes sit in the British Museum, still whispering their tales. The mausoleum proved one thing: with enough ambition, even mortality could be defied, at least in stone. Perched high in the Andes, Machu Picchu isn't just a city, it's a defiance of gravity. Built at nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, this Inca citadel clings to the mountains like a work of art chiseled directly into the rock. But what's truly staggering isn't just its location. It's the fact that every stone here was cut, moved, and fitted together without mortar, iron tools, or even the wheel. The precision is so exact that after 500 years of earthquakes, landslides, and relentless weather, the walls still stand without a single crack. How did the Inca achieve such perfection in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth? Start with the stones themselves. The Inca didn't quarry in the traditional sense, they shaped the mountain. Using harder stones as hammers, workers pounded granite blocks until they fractured along natural lines, then painstakingly polished them with sand and water. The result, blocks with edges so sharp and surfaces so smooth, they fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Some stones have as many as 30 angles, each one interlocking with its neighbors so tightly that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. This technique, called ashlar masonry, wasn't just for show. In a region riddled with earthquakes, these flexible, mortar-free walls could sway and settle without collapsing, a stroke of genius that modern engineers still study. But the real mystery lies in how these stones got here. Some weigh over 50 tons, and the nearest quarry was miles away, down near the Urubamba River. Without wheels or draft animals stronger than llamas, the Inca likely dragged these monoliths up vertiginous slopes using ropes made of woven grass and log rollers. Imagine the effort, hundreds of workers chanting in unison, inching these slabs up muddy trails with nothing to catch them if they slipped. Some theorize they built temporary ramps or even diverted rivers to float stones closer, but the truth remains elusive. What's certain is that this wasn't just labor, it was a symphony of coordination where every pull, every pause had to be perfectly timed. Then there's the citadel's design. Machu Picchu isn't just stacked stones, it's a masterclass in harmony with nature. Terraces carved into the mountainside prevent erosion, while underground drainage channels funnel torrential rains away from the foundations. Buildings align with solstices, and windows frame sacred peaks like natural altars. Even the mortar-less walls taper inward slightly, a subtle trick to stabilize them against tremors. Why go to such extremes? This wasn't a fortress or a bustling capital, it was likely a royal retreat or spiritual sanctuary. The Inca didn't just build on the land, they honored it, weaving their architecture into the very bones of the mountains. Machu Picchu's genius isn't just in how it was made, but in the message it sends, that even in the clouds, humanity can leave a mark that endures. Stretching over 13,000 miles across mountain ridges and deserts, the Great Wall of China isn't just a barrier, it's a staggering testament to human perseverance. Built over 2,000 years by dynasties stretching from the Qin to the Ming, this megastructure wasn't the work of a single era but a mosaic of sweat, strategy, and sheer will. And here's what defies belief: without satellites, blueprints, or even standardized measurement tools, ancient engineers orchestrated a project so vast it's visible from space. But how do you build something this colossal using nothing but human hands and the earth beneath your feet? The answer lies in adaptability. Unlike the uniform stone fortresses of Europe, the Great Wall was a patchwork of local materials, whatever the landscape provided. In the rocky northern stretches, workers quarried granite and limestone, chiseling blocks so heavy it took teams of men just to lift one. Across the arid plains, they mixed tamped earth with gravel and reeds, pounding layers into a concrete-like mass so durable it still stands today. And in the western deserts, where neither stone nor soil was viable, they layered bundles of red willow and tamarisk branches, creating makeshift barriers that could slow invaders long enough for smoke signals to summon reinforcements. Every mile was a negotiation with the land, a dialogue between necessity and the raw materials at hand. But materials were only half the battle. The real challenge was labor. Historians estimate millions of workers toiled on the wall: soldiers, peasants, even convicts drafted as punishment. In the Qin dynasty alone, records suggest 300,000 soldiers and nearly 500,000 civilians were mobilized. Picture the scene: armies of men hauling baskets of dirt up vertiginous slopes, their hands blistered from ropes, their backs bent under the weight of stones. Some sections were so remote that workers lived and died on site, their bones buried beneath the very walls they built. The Ming dynasty later refined the process, organizing laborers into military-like units with specialized roles: quarrymen, masons, transporters. Each group a cog in a machine that inched forward year after year. Coordination was another marvel. Without radios or instant communication, commanders relied on beacon towers spaced at intervals of roughly 1 mile. These towers weren't just watchposts, they were a neural network. At the first sign of invasion, guards lit prearranged signals: smoke by day, fire by night, that could relay a message across the wall's entire length in hours. Couriers on horseback carried detailed reports, while drums and flags conveyed precise troop movements. This system wasn't just efficient, it was modular, adaptable to the wall's ever-growing sprawl as new sections were added over centuries. Yet the Great Wall's true brilliance lies in its contradictions. It was both a shield and a sieve, deterring some raids while others slipped through. It united China geographically but fractured its resources, draining treasuries and lives with each expansion. And while it's often romanticized as an impenetrable monolith, the reality was messier. Sections crumbled from neglect, were rebuilt, or were abandoned altogether as dynasties rose and fell. Even its famed visibility from space is a myth. The wall blends into the terrain when viewed from orbit, a humbling reminder that human endeavors are often grander in our imaginations than in reality. But that doesn't diminish its achievement. The Great Wall stands as a monument to incremental triumph, a project where centuries of sweat and sacrifice accumulated into something transcendent. It wasn't built by emperors or architects alone. but by countless unnamed hands, each stone a silent testament to the stubborn belief that against all odds, humans could bend the earth itself to their will. And perhaps that's the most haunting lesson, that the greatest walls aren't made of stone but of time. The Roman Colosseum didn't just dominate the skyline of ancient Rome, it defied the very limits of engineering. Built in just under a decade, around 2,000 years ago, this massive amphitheater could seat over 50,000 roaring spectators, its towering arches and vaulted corridors a masterclass in precision and brute strength. But what's truly staggering isn't just its scale, it's how the Romans built it with materials and techniques so advanced, we're still dissecting their secrets today. Start with the bones of the structure, concrete. Not the rough, crumbling mix we often associate with ancient ruins, but a revolutionary recipe that's arguably stronger than what we use now. The Romans combined volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius with lime and water, creating a paste that hardened underwater and resisted cracks. This wasn't just poured haphazardly, it was layered with graded stones, lighter materials at the top to reduce weight, denser aggregates at the base to bear the load. The result, a skeleton so resilient that even after centuries of neglect, earthquakes, and stone looters, 2/3 of the Colosseum still stands. Then there's the facade, clad in travertine limestone, a stone so heavy each block weighed up to 5 tons. Quarried from Tibur, over 20 miles away, these stones were dragged to Rome on wooden sledges, likely by teams of oxen or prisoners of war. But here's the brilliance, the Romans didn't just stack them. They used iron clamps to bind the blocks together, a technique so effective that when later sculptors pried out the metal for reuse, the empty clamp holes became the Colosseum's iconic pockmarked surface. And those towering arches, each one is a self-supporting marvel, distributing weight so evenly that the outer wall could be both monumentally tall and surprisingly hollow, lined with staircases and corridors to funnel crowds in minutes. Speaking of crowds, the Colosseum was as much about movement as it was about spectacle. Its 76 numbered entrances and intricate vomitoria passages designed to spew forth spectators ensured the entire arena could empty in less than 10 minutes. Beneath the wooden floor lay an underworld of tunnels and pulley-operated lifts, used to hoist gladiators, animals, and even elaborate stage sets into the arena. Imagine the coordination, slaves turning giant windlasses backstage, elevators creaking upward, trapdoors flipping open to unleash surprises on the sand. Yet the real genius lies in the details. The Colosseum's elliptical shape wasn't just for aesthetics, it amplified sound, ensuring even the cheapest seats heard every clash of swords. The awning system, manned by 1,000 sailors, could unfurl a canvas roof to shade spectators from the sun, and the substructure, designed to flood for mock naval battles, then drained swiftly through hidden channels. This wasn't just a building, it was a machine, every arch, every corridor serving a purpose. Why pour such resources into a playground? The Colosseum was Rome's ultimate propaganda tool, a symbol of imperial power where the emperor could dazzle the masses with bread and circuses. But it was also a feat of civic engineering, proving that even in an era without cranes or computers, humans could orchestrate stone, sweat, and ambition into something that would outlast empires. The Colosseum whispers a challenge across the centuries. This is what happens when you refuse to accept limits. Perched atop Athens' Acropolis, the Parthenon seems to defy both time and physics. A temple so meticulously crafted that even its flaws were deliberate acts of genius. Built nearly 2,500 years ago, this marble masterpiece didn't just honor the goddess Athena. It became a textbook of architectural rebellion, where every line, every curve was a calculated sleight of hand. What appears at first glance to be a rigid grid of columns and beams is actually a symphony of optical illusions engineered to outwit the human eye. Take the columns, for instance. They aren't straight. Each one swells slightly at the center, a technique called intosses, designed to counter an eerie optical illusion. perfectly straight columns would appear to sag under the weight of the roof. Even the floor isn't flat, it arcs upward toward the center, preventing rainwater from pooling while making the temple seem to rise majestically against the sky. And those iconic columns, they lean inward just enough that, if extended, they'd meet almost a mile above the temple. This wasn't sloppy craftsmanship, it was geometry wielded like a magician's trick, ensuring the Parthenon felt perfect even when perfection was mathematically impossible. Then there's the marble itself, quarried from Mount Pentelicus 12 miles away. These blocks were hauled uphill by oxen and sledges, their surfaces polished to a sheen that caught the Aegean sun. But the real shocker, the Parthenon was built without mortar. Each block was carved with protruding knobs and matching sockets, fitting together like a 3D puzzle. Workers used bronze clamps sealed with molten lead to lock stones in place, a system so resilient it survived earthquakes that flattened modern buildings. In fact, the entire structure was designed to move. During tremors, the columns rock slightly in their sockets, then settle back into place, a dance of flexibility and strength that's kept the Parthenon standing while lesser ruins crumbled. But the temple's secrets go deeper. Recent scans reveal that even the spacing of the columns follows a precise ratio, mirroring mathematical harmonies found in nature. The distance between columns isn't arbitrary, it's based on the golden ratio, a proportion seen in everything from seashells to galaxies. This wasn't just architecture, it was philosophy in stone, a physical manifesto of the Greek belief that beauty and truth were rooted in universal patterns. Why such obsession with detail? The Parthenon wasn't merely a religious site, it was Athens' defiant shout to the world. After the Persians burned the old temple, the rebuilt version became a symbol of resilience, its perfection a middle finger to defeat. Every optical trick, every quake-resistant joint whispered the same message: we bow to no one, not even gravity, and somehow, against all odds, that whisper still echoes. Even as its sculptures were looted, its interior repurposed as a church, then a mosque, then an ammunition dump which exploded in 1687, the bones of the Parthenon endure. Its survival isn't luck, it's a testament to the fact that when humans marry art to engineering, even earthquakes become mere footnotes. Standing sentinel on the windswept slopes of Easter Island, the Moai aren't just statues, they're a silent scream of human ambition. Carved from volcanic rock by a civilization with no metal tools, no wheels, and no beasts of burden, these towering figures average 13 feet tall and weigh a staggering 14 tons each. The largest, nicknamed El Gigante, lies unfinished in its quarry, a colossal 82-foot behemoth that would have weighed over 150 tons if completed. But the real mystery isn't just how the Rapa Nui people carved them, it's how they moved these giants across miles of rugged terrain to their final posts, where they've stared stoically at the horizon for centuries. The journey began at Rono Roroku, a volcanic crater where 95% of the Moai were carved directly from the soft, tough stone. Using nothing but basalt hand chisels called toki, workers would chip away at the rock face, shaping the statues from the top down to avoid undercuts. Each stroke had to be precise. One wrong blow could crack months of work. The Moai weren't just heads, their bodies extended deep into the earth, often attached to the bedrock until the final moment of separation. Archaeologists have found partially completed statues still fused to the quarry walls, their faces eerily suspended between creation and abandonment. Then came the transport. For decades, the prevailing theory involved wooden sledges and log rollers, with teams of workers hauling the statues upright in a rocking motion. But recent experiments suggest another possibility. The Moai might have been walked. By lashing ropes around the statue's head and base, teams could have swayed them side to side, inching them forward like a refrigerator being nudged into place. This method, while labor-intensive, would explain the lack of widespread deforestation traditionally blamed on log rollers. It also hints at something profound. the Rapa Nui didn't just move stones, they danced with them, turning back-breaking labor into a rhythmic ceremony. But the final act was the most precarious, raising the moai onto their stone platforms, or ahu. Using a combination of levered ramps and counterweights, workers would tilt the statues forward inch by inch, sliding stones beneath them until they stood upright. Some ahu were built with precise inclines to help guide the statues into place, while others show evidence of temporary earth ramps that were later dismantled. The risk was enormous. A single slip could send tons of stone crashing down, shattering months of effort. Why commit to such a monumental task? The moai weren't mere decorations, they were vessels of ancestral power. Each one represented a deified forebear, their hollow eyes believed to channel mana or spiritual energy to protect the living. The largest statues cluster along the coast, their backs to the sea, as if guarding the island's soul from the vast unknown. Yet this obsession may have also been their undoing. As resources dwindled and clans competed to build ever larger moai, the ecological strain may have tipped the island into crisis, a haunting reminder that even the grandest monuments can't defy the limits of their environment. Today, the moai stand as both triumph and caution. Their creation was a feat of engineering, yes, but also of collective faith, a society that moved mountains quite literally to honor what they held sacred. And in their silence, they ask us a question that lingers. How far would you go to leave your mark on the world? Hidden deep in the jungles of Java, the Borobudur temple doesn't just rise from the earth, it emerges like a stone lotus blossoming toward the sky. Built in the 9th century, this colossal Buddhist monument is a mountain of wisdom carved into rock. Its 9 stacked terraces forming a 3-dimensional mandala meant to guide pilgrims toward enlightenment. But what makes Borobudur truly astonishing isn't just its spiritual symbolism, it's the fact that every inch of this 2 million block masterpiece was assembled without mortar, without cranes, and in one of the most geologically unstable regions on the planet. Start with the terrain itself. Java sits along the volatile Pacific Ring of Fire, where earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are constant threats. Yet the builders chose to construct Borobudur atop a natural hill, reshaping it into a perfect square base measuring nearly 400 feet on each side. To stabilize the ground, they laid a lattice of interlocking stone channels beneath the temple, a hidden drainage system that prevents rainwater from destabilizing the foundation. An innovation so effective that after 1,200 years the structure still stands firm. The stones tell another story. Over 72 stupas and 500 Buddha statues adorn the upper terraces, each carved from andesite, a volcanic rock so hard it resists erosion. Quarried from nearby rivers, these blocks were transported uphill using a combination of log rollers, sleds, and sheer manpower. But here's the twist: none of the stones are glued together. Instead, they're meticulously stacked using a technique called lock and key, where protruding knobs on one block fit snugly into grooves on another. This mortar-free design allows the entire temple to flex during earthquakes, swaying rather than shattering, a stroke of genius that modern engineers call anti-seismic architecture. Then there are the reliefs. Wrapping around Borobudur's galleries for nearly 3 miles, these intricately carved panels depict everything from Buddhist parables to scenes of daily life in ancient Java. The precision is staggering. Artisans used simple chisels to etch delicate details like the folds of a robe or the petals of a flower, often working at heights where one misstep could mean disaster. Some panels are so high up that they're invisible from the ground, suggesting they were carved not for human eyes, but as offerings to the divine. But the temple's greatest secret lies in its alignment. Borobudur is positioned so precisely that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the rising sun casts shadows that make the entire structure appear to glow from within. Staircases and niches are angled to capture sunlight at specific times, transforming stone into a celestial clock. This wasn't just art, it was sacred geometry fused with astronomy, a bridge between Earth and cosmos. Why pour such effort into a temple meant to be walked, not inhabited? Borobudur was designed as a physical journey toward nirvana. Pilgrims would spiral upward through its levels, moving from the earthly realm depicted in the lower reliefs to the formless void symbolized by the empty stupa at the summit. Each step was a meditation, each carving a lesson, and in that ascent the builders left a challenge. Enlightenment isn't given, it's built block by block, just like their temple. Rising from the Cambodian jungle like a mirage, Angkor Wat isn't just a temple, it's a symphony in sandstone, a city-sized monument to celestial ambition. Built in the 12th century by King Suryavarman II, this sprawling complex stretches over 400 acres, its central tower mimicking the sacred Mount Meru of Hindu cosmology. But what makes Angkor Wat truly mind-bending isn't its spiritual symbolism, it's the sheer logistics behind its construction. How do you build the world's largest religious structure without modern machinery, in a landscape where monsoons turn the earth to soup? The answer lies in 3 revolutionary feats: quarrying genius, water worship, and an army of labor organized with almost military precision. Start with the stones. Angkor Wat's iconic caramel-colored towers and galleries are built from 5 to 10 million sandstone blocks, each one hauled from quarries at Mount Kulin, 25 miles northeast. This wasn't just a matter of chiseling rocks. The builders selected sandstone with almost artistic care, favoring fine-grained layers that resisted cracking. Workers split the stone using nothing but wooden wedges soaked in water, exploiting nature's physics as the expanding wood cleaved clean slabs, but transporting these blocks to the site. That required a stroke of engineering brilliance. Archaeologists believe the Khmer dug a network of canals linking the quarries to the Siem Reap River, floating the stones downstream on bamboo rafts during the flood season. Picture the scene, thousands of slabs gliding through the jungle like a slow-motion conveyor belt, each one destined to become part of something transcendent. Once on site, the stones met Angkor's secret weapon, water. The Khmers didn't just tolerate the monsoons, they harnessed them. The entire complex sits within a grid of reservoirs and moats that acted as both spiritual symbols and construction tools. During the rainy season, workers likely floated stones along these waterways, positioning them near their final locations before the waters receded. The moats also stabilized the soft ground, preventing the temple's massive weight from sinking into the earth. But the real masterpiece was the hydraulic system beyond the temple walls, a web of canals, barrages, massive reservoirs, and spillways that turned the entire region into a machine. Recent LiDAR scans reveal these channels weren't random. They were calibrated to capture sediment, control flooding, and even irrigate rice paddies to feed the workforce. Angkor Wat didn't rise despite the water. It rose because of it, and then there's the human factor. Building Angkor Wat required a labor force historians estimate at 30,000 to 50,000 people, not just haulers and masons, but sculptors, painters, and even dancers to ritually consecrate each stone. The Khmer organized this army with a mix of devotion and pragmatism. Skilled artisans lived in permanent settlements near the site, while seasonal laborers, likely farmers working during the dry season, were conscripted through a corvée system, contributing their labor as a form of tax. The logistics of feeding this workforce boggle the mind. Archaeologists have found evidence of sprawling market areas and rice storage pits capable of holding enough grain to sustain thousands for months. But Angkor Wat's true brilliance lies in its details. The sandstone blocks were so precisely cut that many fit together without mortar, their joints sealed with a vegetable-based compound that's still intact today. Bas-reliefs stretch for nearly half a mile, depicting everything from Hindu epics to historical battles, each figure carved with eyelashes and jewelry so fine they'd challenge a modern engraver. And the alignment, the temple's western gate is positioned so precisely that during the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over the central tower, a celestial nod to Vishnu, the deity to whom the complex was dedicated. Why pour such resources into a single site? Angkor Wat was more than a temple, it was a cosmic statement. By mirroring the heavens on earth, Suryavarman didn't just honor the gods, he proclaimed his kingdom their earthly equal. And in doing so, he left us a puzzle wrapped in sandstone. How many hands, how many monsoons, how many lifetimes does it take to build the impossible? The answer whispers from every carved apsara, every water-worn step, as many as it takes. Carved into the rose-red cliffs of Jordan's desert canyon, the treasury of Petra isn't just a building, it's a mountain turned inside out. This towering facade, standing nearly 130 feet tall, wasn't constructed block by block but excavated, chiseled from the living rock by the Nabateans over 2,000 years ago. Picture the audacity of this. An entire civilization looked at a sheer cliff face and saw not an obstacle, but a blank canvas. With nothing but hand tools and an intimate knowledge of stone, they transformed solid sandstone into columns, statues, and alcoves so precise they'd make modern sculptors pause. The process began at the top. Unlike traditional construction where workers build upward, the Nabateans carved Petra downward, starting with the highest points of the facade to avoid debris raining on laborers below. Using iron chisels and wooden mallets, they etched outlines directly into the rock, then painstakingly removed layer after layer, their tools growing duller with each strike. Sandstone is relatively soft until it's exposed to air. As the rock dried, it hardened into a near-metallic durability, meaning every chip had to be deliberate. One wrong strike could ruin weeks of progress, but the real challenge wasn't just carving, it was seeing. The Nabateans worked without blueprints or grids, relying instead on rope plumb lines and wooden scaffolds to maintain symmetry. They'd suspend weighted cords to mark vertical lines, ensuring columns stayed straight, while horizontal grooves in the rock suggest they used water levels to keep tiers aligned. And here's the kicker. All this precision happened in a desert canyon where temperatures could swing from scorching heat to chilling cold in hours, causing the stone to expand and contract. Yet the facade's delicate floral carvings and lifelike statues show no signs of cracking, a testament to their understanding of the stone's natural grain. Then there's the mystery of the interior. The treasury isn't just a pretty face, it's a honeycomb of chambers tunneling deep into the cliff. Workers hollowed out these rooms using a technique called block mining, chiseling small tunnels to isolate sections of rock, then smashing them apart with iron picks. The deeper they went, the darker and more dangerous it became. Oil lamps provided feeble light, and the air grew thick with dust, yet they persisted, carving burial chambers and ritual spaces with the same precision as the facade. Why pour such effort into a desert cliff? The Nabateans were master traders, and Petra sat at the crossroads of ancient spice routes. The treasury, likely a royal tomb or temple, was their billboard to the world, a display of power meant to awe caravanners approaching from the scorching sands. Its Hellenistic columns and Egyptian-inspired motifs weren't just decorative, they signaled cultural fluency, a way to say, we belong to this global network. And it worked. Even in ruins, the treasury still takes our breath away, a monument not just to the dead, but to the living hands that wrested beauty from stone. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan doesn't just dominate the horizon, it consumes it. 2,000 years ago, this colossal structure rose from the Mexican highlands like a man-made mountain, its base covering the same area as the Great Pyramid of Giza and its original height soaring over 200 feet. But what makes it truly extraordinary isn't just its size, it's the fact that an entire metropolis of over 100,000 people thrived around it, and we still don't know who built it. Step closer, and the pyramid's genius reveals itself in the details. Unlike the smooth-sided pyramids of Egypt, Teotihuacan structures use talud table row architecture, a signature style where sloping walls talud meet horizontal panels table row, creating a rhythmic pattern that seems to pulse with energy. Each level isn't just stacked, it's orchestrated with proportions so precise they align with celestial events. During the equinoxes, shadows cascade down the staircase in a perfect serpentine ripple, as if the pyramid itself is alive. The construction secrets are even more baffling. The pyramid's core isn't solid stone, it's a mix of rubble, compacted earth, and clay, held together by a lattice of wooden beams long since rotted away. This lightweight fill was then faced with volcanic stone, hauled from quarries miles away without wheels or beasts of burden. Some theories suggest workers used reed ropes and log rollers, while others propose a system of levees and canals to float stones during seasonal floods. But the real shocker, the entire city, including the pyramid, is aligned to mirror the Pleiades star cluster, with the Street of the Dead acting as a terrestrial echo of the Milky Way. Why such cosmic precision? Teotihuacan's builders left no written records, but the pyramid's placement hints at a sacred purpose. Beneath its center lies a natural cave system, revered as a portal to the underworld. Offerings of jade, obsidian, and even liquid mercury have been found buried within, suggesting rituals that blurred the lines between earth and sky. The pyramid wasn't just a monument, it was a bridge, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds collided. And then there's the lingering question, who were these people? The Aztecs, who discovered the abandoned city centuries later, named it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were created, because they couldn't fathom humans achieving such grandeur. Modern archaeology hasn't solved the mystery either. No royal tombs, no grand statues, no clear evidence of a ruling class, just the pyramids, silent and stubborn, refusing to give up their secrets. Perhaps that's their power. Teotihuacan forces us to confront how much we don't know about the past. Its builders didn't just move stone, they moved mountains, then vanished into shadows, leaving behind a city so perfect, it feels less like ruins and more like a question etched in stone. Hidden in the rolling hills of southern Africa, the Great Zimbabwe ruins stand as a silent testament to a civilization that defied the odds. Built between the 11th and 15th centuries, this sprawling stone city rises from the earth with a quiet majesty, its walls snaking across the landscape without a single drop of mortar to hold them together. What makes these ruins so extraordinary isn't just their scale, but the fact that every stone was cut, stacked, and balanced using nothing but human hands and an intimate understanding of local granite. The walls of Great Zimbabwe are a marvel of dry stone construction, a technique where stones are carefully selected and shaped to fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle. Workers quarried granite from the surrounding hills, splitting massive boulders by heating them with fire and then dousing them with water to create clean fractures. The resulting blocks were then painstakingly shaped using harder stones as hammers, their edges smoothed until they locked into place with near-perfect precision. Some walls stretch over 30 feet high, their curves and corners so seamlessly joined that even after centuries of exposure to wind and rain, they remain standing, defying gravity through sheer craftsmanship. But the real wonder lies in the details. The stones aren't uniform, they vary in size and shape, yet each one was placed with such deliberate care that the gaps between them are often no wider than a fingernail. This wasn't haphazard stacking, it was a masterclass in structural engineering. The builders knew that by tilting stones slightly inward as the walls rose, they could create a self-supporting taper that distributed weight evenly, preventing collapse. And they didn't just build straight walls, they constructed enclosures, towers, and even a massive conical tower that still puzzles archaeologists today. Was it a grain silo, a symbolic monument, or something else entirely? The city's layout reveals even more ingenuity. Great Zimbabwe was divided into three main sections: the hill complex, the valley ruins, and the iconic Great Enclosure, a vast elliptical structure with walls up to 36 feet thick. The Great Enclosure alone required over 1 million stones, each one hauled and placed without wheels, pulleys, or even draft animals. Instead, workers likely used a combination of log rollers, rope slings, and sheer numbers to move these massive blocks into position. Why go to such lengths? Great Zimbabwe wasn't just a fortress or a palace, it was the heart of a thriving trade empire, connected to networks that stretched as far as China and the Middle East. Gold, ivory, and copper flowed through its gates, and its rulers commanded wealth and influence that rivaled medieval Europe's greatest kingdoms. The stone walls weren't just functional, they were a statement, proof that Africa had its own traditions of monumental architecture, every bit as sophisticated as those of Europe or Asia. And yet, the greatest mystery isn't how they built it, it's why they left. By the 15th century, the city was abandoned, its people gone, its halls silent. Some theories point to climate change, others to shifting trade routes, but the stones remain, whispering of a time when human hands could shape the earth itself into something eternal. Great Zimbabwe doesn't just challenge our assumptions about African history, it forces us to ask, how many other civilizations have we underestimated, their stories still waiting in the rubble? Buried beneath the earth for over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army isn't just a collection of statues, it's an entire underground kingdom frozen in time. Discovered in 1974 by farmers digging a well near China's first emperor's tomb, this sprawling necropolis contains over 8,000 life-sized soldiers, each one as unique as a living warrior. But what's truly staggering isn't just their numbers, it's the fact that every single figure, from the lowest infantryman to the highest general, was handmade with meticulous detail, down to the tread on their sandals and the strands of their beard. The craftsmanship here defies belief. Unlike mass-produced replicas, these statues were built in workshops by teams of artisans who signed their work, names like Zhang and Lai still etched into the clay. Each soldier's face was sculpted with distinct features, some broad-cheeked and stern, others narrow-faced with delicate brows likely modeled after real members of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's army. Even their armor reflects rank and role. Officers wear intricate breastplates with elaborate knots, while archers sport lightweight tunics for mobility. Some figures kneel with crossbows at the ready, their fingers curled around invisible triggers. Others stand poised with bronze weapons, long since looted but once sharp enough to draw blood. Then comes the logistical nightmare. Creating 8,000 statues plus hundreds of horses and chariots required industrial-scale coordination. Archaeologists estimate the project consumed over 40,000 tons of bronze and enough clay to fill a modern sports stadium. Kilns the size of small houses fired the figures in sections, legs, torsos, arms, heads, then assembled them like gruesome puppets. The heat had to be controlled perfectly, too hot and the clay cracked, too cool and it crumbled. Once fired, each piece was painted in vibrant pigments, purple tunics, green sashes, pink flesh, now faded but still visible in fragments. But the real puzzle is why. Why bury an army that no one would ever see? Emperor Qin feared death above all else, and the Terracotta Army was his attempt to conquer it, a clay legion meant to protect him in the afterlife. The figures weren't just art, they were functional, arranged in battle formation across 3 massive pits, their ranks mirroring the organization of a real Qin dynasty army. Even their placement was strategic, archers at the front, chariots at the flanks, and commanders at the rear, all facing east, the direction from which Qin's enemies had once come. And here's the chilling part, this was just the beginning. The terracotta soldiers guard only the outskirts of Qin's tomb, which remains unexcavated beneath a man-made mountain. Ancient texts describe rivers of mercury, booby traps, and a celestial ceiling studded with pearls, a microcosm of the emperor's realm preserved for eternity. For now, the army stands as a warning, a reminder that even the mightiest rulers couldn't escape death, but they could certainly try to outsmart it. The Pyramid of Chichen Itza doesn't just dominate the Yucatan jungle, it speaks. Known as El Castillo, this 90-foot-tall stepped monument is more than a temple. It's a celestial clock carved in stone, a masterpiece where every shadow, every angle, whispers the secrets of the Maya cosmos. Built over 1,000 years ago without metal tools, wheels, or even the concept of zero as we know it, this structure proves that precision isn't about technology, it's about obsession. Start with the stairs. The pyramid's 4 sides each have 91 steps, which, when added to the shared platform at the top, total 365, one for every day of the solar year. But this isn't just a clever calendar. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow along the northern staircase that slithers like a serpent, merging with carved stone snake heads at the base. This phenomenon, lasting just minutes, wasn't accidental. The Maya engineered the pyramid's incline to exactly 24 degrees, a tilt that synchronizes perfectly with Earth's axial tilt to create this illusion. Now consider the layers. Unlike the smooth slopes of Egypt's pyramids, El Castillo is a series of 9 stacked platforms, each representing the underworld's 9 levels in Maya mythology. The number isn't arbitrary, it mirrors the 9 stages of the god Kukulkan's descent from the heavens. The platforms narrow as they rise, creating a telescoping effect that amplifies the pyramid's height when viewed from below. But the real marvel is how they built it. Workers hauled limestone blocks from quarries miles away, shaping them with stone tools and abrasives until the edges fit snugly enough to withstand hurricanes. No mortar, no clamps, just gravity and geometry holding the tiers together. Then there's the acoustics. Clap your hands at the base of El Castillo, and the echo doesn't just bounce back, it chirps like the sacred Quetzal bird. This auditory trick, achieved by the precise spacing of the steps, wasn't decorative. In rituals, priests might have used the sound to mimic divine voices, blurring the line between human and celestial communication. But the pyramid's greatest secret lies beneath it. In the 1930s, archaeologists discovered a hidden chamber inside an earlier, smaller pyramid buried within El Castillo. Inside, they found a jade-studded jaguar throne and a sacrificial offering, hinting at the structure's role as a portal between worlds. The Maya didn't just build upward, they built inward, layering their sacred spaces like the levels of the cosmos itself. Why such devotion to alignment? For the Maya, time wasn't linear, it was a cycle, a wheel turning with the stars. El Castillo wasn't just a temple, it was a machine designed to harness the rhythms of the universe. Every shadow, every echo was a reminder the sky wasn't distant. It lived in the stones. Long before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, before the first cities rose from the earth, there was Göbekli Tepe, a hilltop in modern-day Turkey where hunter-gatherers carved stones so massive, so intricate, they shattered every assumption about what prehistoric humans were capable of. Dating back over 11,500 years, this cluster of circular temples isn't just old, it's ancient in a way that defies logic. These aren't crude piles of rocks, they're meticulously arranged T-shaped pillars, some weighing more than 16 tons, engraved with leaping foxes, coiled snakes, and swooping cranes. A menagerie frozen in stone by people who hadn't yet invented pottery, let alone agriculture. How do you build a sacred complex when your entire society is nomadic, when every waking hour is spent hunting and foraging just to survive? The answer lies in the pillars themselves. Carved from the local limestone bedrock, each monolith was first roughed out using flint tools, then painstakingly polished with sand and water until the surfaces gleamed. The T-shape isn't random. It's thought to represent stylized human figures, their flat tops as heads, their shafts as bodies, standing silent vigil in rings that mirror the layout of later Neolithic villages. But here's the twist, these buildings weren't constructed in the traditional sense. Workers chiseled the pillars directly from the hill's bedrock, leaving them attached at the base before severing the final connection and hauling them just a few yards to their final positions. It was a dance with the earth itself, a slow, deliberate act of revealing what the stone already held. Transporting these giants would have been a Herculean task. Without wheels, without domesticated animals stronger than dogs, the builders likely used a combination of log rollers, rope made from twisted reeds, and brute force. Experiments show it would have taken teams of 50 or more people to move a single pillar, their backs straining as they inched it across the uneven ground. And they didn't stop at one. Dozens of these monoliths were raised across multiple enclosures, each circle later deliberately buried under thousands of tons of soil, as if the act of building was as sacred as the rituals performed there. What rituals, though? The carvings offer tantalizing clues. Vultures loom over headless human figures, a motif later seen in Neolithic sites where sky burial was practiced, bodies left exposed for birds to carry souls to the afterlife. A pillar etched with a belt and loincloth might depict a shaman, while another shows a scorpion poised to strike. These weren't random doodles, they were a symbolic language, a way to encode myths and warnings in stone. The sheer density of artistry suggests this wasn't just a gathering place but a proto-cathedral, where clans converged for ceremonies that bound them together in ways we can barely imagine. The greatest mystery isn't how they built it, it's why. Göbekli Tepe turns the traditional narrative of civilization on its head. For decades, we assumed humans only settled down to farm and then built temples. But here, the temples came first, the hunger to create something greater than themselves. To carve order from chaos may have been the spark that eventually led to villages, crops, and everything that followed. The stones of Göbekli Tepe whisper a radical idea. Maybe it wasn't hunger that built the first cities, but awe. And if that's true, what else might we have gotten wrong about the dawn of human ambition? Step into the Karnak temple complex, and you're not just walking through ruins, you're stepping into a fossilized storm of devotion. Spread over 200 acres near modern-day Luxor, this wasn't just a temple, it was a cosmic engine, built and rebuilt by 30 pharaohs across 2,000 years. Imagine a sacred construction site where generations of workers lived and died without seeing the finished product, where every column, every obelisk was a prayer carved in stone. The hypostyle hall alone is enough to stagger the senses. A forest of 134 sandstone columns, each one so massive it would take 5 adults linking hands to encircle them. These aren't uniform posts, they blossom outward like papyrus stalks, their capitals fanning into delicate floral designs that seem to defy their own weight. How do you carve something so delicate into stone that weighs 400 tons? The answer lies in the precision of Egyptian craftsmen who used copper chisels and abrasives to shape the sandstone, then painted it in pigments so vibrant, lapis lazuli blue, malachite green, that traces still cling to the crevices today. Then there are the obelisks, those needle-thin monuments to the sun god Ra. The tallest still standing, erected by Queen Hatshepsut, rockets 80 feet into the sky, its tip sheathed in electrum, a shimmering alloy of gold and silver, to catch the first and last light of day. But here's the rub, these obelisks weren't just decorative. They were cosmic antennas, their placement aligning with solstices so precisely that shadows would slither down their sides like serpents, marking sacred time for priests. Transporting them was another feat entirely. Quarried from Aswan over 100 miles south, these monoliths were floated down the Nile on barges during flood season, then dragged uphill on sledges lubricated with Nile mud. One unfinished obelisk still lodged in its quarry reveals the painstaking process. Workers carved trenches around it, then hammered wooden wedges soaked in water to split it free, a high-stakes operation where one misjudged strike could shatter months of labor. What truly sets Karnak apart, though, is its layered history. Unlike static monuments, this was a living, breathing project where pharaohs competed with their ancestors. Thutmose III built walls over Hatshepsut's reliefs. Ramses II stamped his name on earlier statues. Courtyards lead to sanctuaries that lead to even older sanctuaries, like nesting dolls of devotion. The sacred lake, once used for ritual purification, reflects not just sky but centuries, each ripple whispering of priests who measured the heavens from its banks, of oxen slaughtered in midnight ceremonies, of a civilization that believed stone could touch the divine. Karnak's genius isn't just in its scale but in its stubborn humanity. This wasn't built by gods or giants, but by hands that ached, by backs that bent under the noonday sun. And somehow, those ordinary hands achieved the extraordinary, a place where time itself feels weightless, suspended between earth and eternity. Towering over the confluence of 3 rivers in China's Sichuan province, the Leshan giant Buddha isn't just a statue, it's a mountainside transformed into divinity. Carved over 90 years during the Tang dynasty, this 233-foot colossus stares serenely across the water, its ears alone long enough to shelter a grown adult. But what makes this Buddha truly astonishing isn't just its size. It's the fact that monks, led by a determined master named Hathong, sculpted it directly into the sandstone cliff using nothing but chisels, patience, and an ingenious understanding of nature's laws. The first challenge was the cliff itself. Unlike freestanding sculptures, this Buddha had to be revealed from the rock, its shape emerging as workers chipped away layer after layer. Teams suspended from ropes and bamboo scaffolding hammered away at the stone, starting at the top to avoid debris crashing onto the lower sections. Each strike had to be precise, too deep, and the delicate features might fracture, too shallow, and progress would crawl. The Buddha's curls, each the size of a dinner plate, were carved in perfect spirals, while his downturned lips and heavy-lidded eyes convey a tranquility that belies the violence of their creation. But the real genius lies in what you can't see. The statue is laced with a hidden network of drainage channels, carved directly into the rock behind the folds of the Buddha's robe and hair. These channels funnel rainwater away from the statue's core, preventing erosion that could have worn the features smooth centuries ago. Some pipes divert water to the back of the cliff, while others spill it gracefully from the statue's shoulders, creating the illusion of tears during heavy rains, a poetic touch that blends engineering with artistry. Then there's the matter of tools. Without modern machinery, workers relied on iron chisels and wooden mallets, sharpening and replacing them constantly as the abrasive sandstone wore the metal down. They used a technique called anchor carving, where holes were drilled into the rock to guide the depth of each cut, ensuring the proportions remained flawless as the work progressed downward. The Buddha's hands, resting on his knees, were so massive that laborers could stand in their shadows, and his toenails, each as wide as a doorway, were polished smooth enough to reflect the clouds. Why carve a mountain into a monk? Legend says Hathong sought to calm the treacherous rivers below, where whirlpools routinely capsized boats. Whether by divine intervention or sheer coincidence, the project worked. The rubble from carving was dumped into the water, altering the currents and making the passage safer. Today, the Buddha still sits, his presence a reminder that even the mightiest forces, rivers, cliffs, time itself, can yield to human determination. And after 1,200 years, his robes still ripple with the illusion of movement, as if the stone might sigh and stand at any moment. Beneath the sun-baked plains of Cappadocia, Turkey, lies a labyrinth so vast it could hide an entire civilization. In Kuyu, an underground city plunging 18 levels and nearly 200 feet into the earth. Carved from soft volcanic tuff over 3,000 years ago, this wasn't just a refuge. It was a self-sustaining metropolis capable of sheltering 20,000 people for months at a time. Imagine the audacity, an entire city excavated, not built, where every home, every chapel, every stable was chiseled into existence by hand, lit only by flickering oil lamps in the suffocating dark. The rock itself was both the challenge and the solution. Volcanic tuff is soft enough to carve with basic tools, think bronze chisels and stone hammers, but hardens when exposed to air, creating sturdy walls that resist collapse. Workers tunneled downward like ants, hollowing out living quarters with rounded ceilings to distribute weight, their chisel marks still visible on the walls. Each level was connected by a network of sloping corridors, some so narrow they could be blocked by a single rolling stone in times of invasion, but the real stroke of genius. The ventilation shafts, dozens of vertical chimneys, some as deep as 180 feet, funneled fresh air from the surface to the lowest chambers, while cleverly placed ducts ensured stale air was expelled. Even today, these shafts maintain a constant temperature of around 55 degrees Fahrenheit natural climate control in a land where surface temperatures swing from scorching summers to freezing winters. Life underground demanded innovation. Derinkuyu wasn't just a warren of caves, it was a meticulously planned ecosystem. Vast circular storage rooms held grain and wine, their cool, dry conditions preserving food for years. Water wells tapped into underground rivers, ensuring a supply even during sieges. Blackened ceilings in kitchens hint at where fires burned, their smoke cleverly channeled through hidden fissures to avoid detection by enemies above. And the security measures, ingenious, massive millstones taller than a person, could be rolled across passage entrances, their edges grooved to slot into carved tracks, effectively sealing the city like a vault. But who needed such a fortress, and why? Derinkuyu's origins are shrouded in mystery, but historians suspect it was first expanded by the Phrygians around the 8th century BC, then refined by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution. The city's chapels, marked with crosses carved into the rock, suggest a sanctuary for the faithful. Yet older Hittite artifacts found in the deepest layers hint at even earlier use, perhaps as a refuge during Bronze Age wars. What's certain is that Derinkuyu wasn't unique. Over 200 underground cities riddle Cappadocia, some connected by miles of tunnels, forming a subterranean network that transformed the very earth into a shield. The city's abandonment is as enigmatic as its creation. By the 14th century, it lay forgotten, its tunnels silenced until 1963, when a local man knocked down a wall in his basement and stumbled into history. Now, standing in its shadowed corridors, you can't help but marvel at the desperation or determination that drove people to burrow so deep. Derinkuyu isn't just a feat of engineering. It's a testament to humanity's unyielding will to survive, even if it meant rewriting the rules of where and how life could thrive. Crowning a hill above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, Sacsayhuaman isn't just a fortress, it's a masterclass in stonework so precise it makes modern masons weep. These zigzagging walls, some towering nearly 60 feet high, are built from limestone blocks so massive the largest weighs an estimated 360 tons, equivalent to 500 grand pianos. Yet what truly stuns isn't their size, but their seams. Each stone fits against its neighbors with such uncanny perfection that not even a razor blade can slip between them. No mortar, no gaps, just puzzle pieces carved so meticulously, they've withstood centuries of earthquakes that leveled later Spanish colonial buildings. The mystery begins with the quarry. The limestone came from a site over 2 miles away, across rugged terrain with gradients steep enough to make even modern machinery hesitate. Without wheels or draft animals stronger than llamas, the Inca likely used a combination of log rollers, earthen ramps, and ropes woven from iku grass fibers so durable they're still used in Andean textiles today. But here's where it gets wild. Some stones bear peculiar knobs and indentations, suggesting the Inca might have used a technique called keystone hauling, where ropes were lashed around these protrusions to pivot the blocks into place like a cosmic game of Tetris. Then there's the shaping. These aren't uniform bricks, they're polygonal marvels with as many as 12 angles, each one custom cut to interlock flawlessly with its neighbors. Workers likely pounded the stones with harder rocks, then polished them with sand and water until the edges melted together. The zigzag pattern isn't just aesthetic, it's structural. The alternating angles disperse seismic forces, allowing the walls to shift slightly during earthquakes before settling back into place. It's as if the Inca didn't just build a fortress, they built a shock absorber. But why such Herculean effort? Spanish chroniclers claimed Sacsayhuaman was a military stronghold, citing its commanding view of Cusco and the storage rooms once packed with weapons. Yet Inca oral tradition tells a different story. This was a ceremonial hub, its three-tiered walls symbolizing the teeth of the puma, an animal sacred to their cosmology. The largest stones form the lowest level, an intentional nod to the Inca belief that stability began with the earth itself. Recent excavations reveal tunnels and altars hidden beneath the walls, hinting at rituals where the stones weren't just barriers but conduits to the divine. The greatest enigma, though, isn't the how or the why, it's the who. Unlike the pyramids where we know the pharaohs behind them, Sacsayhuaman has no dedicatory plaques, no royal signatures. It was almost certainly commissioned by Pachacuti, the emperor who transformed Cusco into an imperial capital, but the hands that shaped these stones remain nameless. Were they skilled artisans or armies of laborers serving tribute? Did they work year-round or only during the dry season when the stones could slide easier? The answers are buried with them, leaving only the walls to whisper their secrets. Standing before Sacsayhuaman today, you don't just see a fortress, you see a paradox. A structure so solid it defies time, yet so enigmatic it resists understanding. The stones don't just sit there, they lean into each other as if sharing a confidence too profound for modern ears. And perhaps that's the point. The Inca didn't just want to build something that lasted, they wanted to build something that spoke. Rising from the emerald canopy of Guatemala's Patane jungle, the temples of Tikal don't just pierce the sky, they command it. These limestone giants, some soaring over 200 feet, were the heartbeat of a Maya metropolis that thrived for centuries, a city where astronomy, architecture, and raw ambition fused into something transcendent. But what makes these pyramids extraordinary isn't just their height, it's the fact that every stone was hauled, carved and stacked in a rainforest so dense, even sunlight had to fight its way down. Start with the materials. Unlike the desert quarries of Egypt, Tikal's builders wrestled their limestone from jungle pits, hacking through vines and mud to extract blocks often weighing more than a ton. Without metal tools, they relied on harder stones like chert to chip away at the rock face, then polished the surfaces with abrasives until they gleamed. Transporting these blocks through the jungle was its own nightmare. Workers likely rolled them on log pathways, their progress slowed by relentless humidity and the ever-present threat of jaguars lurking in the undergrowth. Every step was a battle against nature itself. Then there's the engineering. The Maya didn't have the true arch. Instead, they pioneered the corbel vault, a technique where each stone layer slightly overhangs the one below, gradually closing the gap at the top. It's a bit like building a staircase and then removing the lower steps. The result, narrow, steep chambers that could support immense weight without collapsing. But the real genius lies in the pyramid's foundations. Tikal sits on porous limestone bedrock, a sponge-like surface that shifts during heavy rains. To compensate, builders packed the ground with layers of crushed stone and clay, creating a stable platform that prevented their temples from sinking into the swampy earth. Scale wasn't just for show, it was cosmic theater. Tikal's Temple Roman IV, the tallest pre-Columbian structure in the Americas, aligns with celestial events so precisely that during the equinoxes, shadows slithered down its steps like serpents, mirroring the descent of the feathered serpent god Kukulkan. The temples weren't just monuments, they were calendars in stone, their staircases acting as sundials, their rooftops as observatories. Priests would climb these vertigo-inducing heights to chant beneath the stars, their voices mingling with the cries of howler monkeys echoing through the canopy. But the jungle fought back. Roots pried apart mortarless joints, storms eroded carvings, and vines strangled plazas. The Maya didn't just build, they maintained, replastering surfaces with stucco made from burned limestone and tree sap, repainting murals in vibrant pigments that flashed against the green. Even their paint was an innovation. They mixed minerals with orchid sap to create a binder so durable, traces still cling to the stone today. Why pour such effort into a city so remote? Tikal wasn't just a religious center, it was a powerhouse controlling trade routes for jade, obsidian, and cacao. Its pyramids doubled as billboards, their towering presence a warning to rivals and a beacon to allies. And when the city finally fell silent in the 9th century, swallowed by the jungle for 1,000 years, those stones still whispered, "We were here." We touch the sky. Now, as archaeologists peel back the vines, Tikal's temples remind us that even in the wildest places, humanity can carve its name into eternity. Imagine standing in the scorching Egyptian sun, watching as workers strain against ropes thicker than tree trunks, inching a 400-ton needle of pink granite toward the sky. The obelisks of Luxor Temple aren't just monuments, they're gravity-defying acts of devotion, each one a love letter to the sun god Amun-Ra carved in stone. But how do you move something taller than a 10-story building without cranes, without wheels, in a world where the strongest beast of burden was an ox? The journey began at the quarries of Aswan, over 400 miles up the Nile. Here, workers chiseled directly into the bedrock, isolating the obelisk's shape by hammering trenches around it with dolerite ball stones harder than granite itself. Once the monolith was free, they faced an impossible task, lifting it onto a wooden sled without snapping it like a toothpick. The solution, a cushion of Nile mud. By saturating the sand beneath the obelisk, they created a slick, semi-liquid surface that reduced friction just enough to slide the Colossus onto its transport. Now came the real test, the voyage down river. The obelisk was loaded onto a barge so colossal, its dimensions were recorded in temple inscriptions over 200 feet long, built from cedar planks lashed together with papyrus rope. When the Nile flooded, this floating fortress would catch the current, drifting downstream with the obelisk cradled in its belly. A single mistake, a snapped rope, a shifted weight, could send centuries of work plunging to the riverbed. Upon arrival at Luxor, the obelisk met its greatest challenge, standing upright. Ramps of packed earth rose at a shallow angle beside its destined location. Workers hauled the stone upward inch by inch, likely using a combination of levers, counterweights, and a pivot point near the base. As the angle steepened, teams behind the obelisk would pull ropes to guide its final descent into a waiting stone socket, while others braced it from the sides with temporary supports. The moment it slid vertical, the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. One tremble, and the obelisk would shatter like glass. But why such Herculean effort? These weren't mere decorations. Each obelisk was a frozen ray of sunlight, its pyramidal cap sheathed in electrum, an alloy of gold and silver, to blaze like a second sun when dawn struck its peak. The hieroglyphs covering its sides weren't just inscriptions, they were spells binding the pharaoh's name to the cosmos. At Luxor, the twin obelisks flanked the temple entrance like divine sentinels, their shadows tracing precise paths across ritual grounds during solstices, turning stone into a celestial clock. Today, only one of Luxor's original obelisks remains. Its twin now stands in Paris Place de la Concorde, a gift from Egypt in the 19th century. But the lone sentinel in Luxor still whispers its secrets. The faintest traces of its original gilding cling to the apex, hinting at the moment when, thousands of years ago, a priest might have shielded his eyes from the glare, convinced if only for a heartbeat that the gods had answered. The Lion Gate of Mycenae doesn't just guard a citadel, it growls across 3,000 years of history. This massive limestone entrance, crowned by two lionesses rearing against a central pillar, is the sole surviving example of monumental sculpture from the Bronze Age Greek world. But it's not the artistry alone that stuns, it's the sheer audacity of its construction. The gate's lintel stone weighs an estimated 20 tons, yet it was hoisted into place without pulleys or cranes, perched atop walls built from boulders so enormous, later Greeks believed only the mythical Cyclopes could have lifted them. The term Cyclopean masonry perfectly captures the gate's brute force aesthetic. Each irregular stone was carefully selected and fitted against its neighbors like a three-dimensional jigsaw, their gaps filled with smaller chunks of limestone. No mortar binds them, just gravity and cunning engineering. The walls taper inward as they rise, a subtle tilt that stabilizes the structure against earthquakes and sieges alike. But the real marvel is the relieving triangle above the lintel, a hollow space framed by meticulously carved stones designed to divert the weight of the wall away from the doorway. This innovation wasn't just practical, it was revolutionary, a precursor to the architectural principles that would define classical Greece centuries later. Then there's the lions, or rather lionesses, carved from a single slab of grey limestone, their powerful bodies twist toward a central column, their forepaws resting on an altar-like base. Their heads, now lost to time, were likely crafted from separate pieces of polished stone or metal, pegged into place with dowels. The detail is extraordinary, muscles tense beneath stylized fur, claws delicately curled around the pillar's edges. But why lionesses? Some scholars interpret them as guardians, symbols of royal power borrowed from Near Eastern cultures. Others see the Minoan influence. Mycenae's rival civilization worshipped a mistress of the animals, often depicted with lions. The gate's true mystery lies in its missing pieces. The column between the lionesses resembles those found in Minoan palaces, yet the overall style is distinctly Mycenaean. Was this a diplomatic nod to a conquered people, or proof of shared artistic traditions? Even the builders' identities are debated. Traditional attributions point to King Agamemnon of Trojan War fame, but modern archaeology suggests the gate predates him by centuries. The stones themselves hold clues. Chisel marks indicate teams working in shifts, while quarrying patterns hint at a workforce numbering in the hundreds. Standing before the Lion Gate today, you're not just looking at a ruin, you're facing a paradox. This was both a defensive bulwark and a propaganda piece, its artistry belying the violence of its era. The lions don't just adorn the gate, they embody it, their silent roar a challenge to every visitor. What empires might you build if you dared to think in stone? Carved into the basalt cliffs of India's Charanandri Hills, the Ellora Caves are a symphony of subtraction. 34 temples, monasteries, and chapels hewn directly from the living rock, each one a testament to the patience and precision of artisans who worked without blueprints, without scaffolding, without even the safety nets of modern tools. Spanning 600 years of labor from the 6th to the 12th century, this UNESCO World Heritage Site isn't just a collection of caves. It's a chronicle of faiths with Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain traditions coexisting in stone. But what's truly staggering isn't the variety, it's the method. Unlike traditional construction where materials are stacked upward, Ellora's creators carved downward, starting at the cliff's peak and chiseling their way to the ground, as if pulling the temples from the mountain's dreams. Take the Kailasa Temple, Ellora's crown jewel. This colossal structure dedicated to Lord Shiva wasn't built, it was liberated. Workers began by excavating 3 massive trenches into the hillside, isolating a single block of basalt as large as a city block. Then, like sculptors revealing a statue hidden within marble, they carved inward from the top down, removing over 200,000 tons of rock to create a freestanding temple complex complete with towers, courtyards, and a life-sized stone elephant. Every pillar, every deity, every floral ornament was shaped in situ, demanding an almost prophetic vision. One wrong strike could ruin the entire design. The precision is haunting. Galleries are spaced so evenly that sunlight filters through them at the same angle each equinox, while the temple's central shrine aligns with the winter solstice sun, bathing Shiva's lingam in golden light. The tools behind this miracle were deceptively simple. Artisans used iron chisels, wooden mallets, and abrasives made from sand or diamond dust to etch details finer than lace. For larger removals, they employed the chisel and wedge technique, hammering metal spikes into natural fissures, then soaking wooden wedges in water to fracture the rock as they expanded. But the real genius lay in their understanding of the stone itself. Basalt is layered like an onion, and Ellora's craftsmen learned to peel it along its natural grain, following hidden fault lines to minimize effort and maximize stability. The cave's ceilings curved gently to distribute weight, while hidden drainage channels cut into the rock prevent monsoon rains from eroding delicate carvings. And what carvings they are! Ellora's walls pulse with life gods and goddesses frozen mid-dance, their jewelry and musculature rendered with anatomical precision. In Cave 16, a relief of Ravana shaking Mount Kailash shows the demon king's veins bulging with effort, while Shiva sits unshaken, his toe barely pressing the earth. Nearby, a silent tableau of Vishnu reclining on the cosmic serpent spans an entire wall, his eyelids half closed in divine repose. The Jain caves, though smaller, rival these with their hypnotic geometric patterns and a lotus carving so intricate its petals seem to quiver in the torchlight. Yet the most humbling detail is invisible: the dust. Scholars estimate that excavating Kailasa alone generated enough rubble to fill 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools, all hauled away in baskets, one load at a time. No pulleys, no beasts of burden, just human hands moving mountains grain by grain. The caves whisper a quiet truth: greatness isn't always about addition. Sometimes it's about knowing what to remove and having the courage to chip away until the masterpiece emerges. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of Peru's bone-dry Pampa Colorado, the Nazca lines aren't just drawings, they're a desert skin peeled back to reveal ancient dreams. These colossal geoglyphs, some stretching over 1,200 feet long, depict everything from spiders to hummingbirds to geometric spirals so precise they could pass as modern crop circles, except they were etched into the earth over 2,000 years ago by hands that never saw their work from above. That's the first mind-bending truth. The Nazca people crafted these designs without flight, without drones, without any way to perceive their full scale except through faith and mathematics. The engineering behind them is deceptively simple yet staggeringly labor-intensive. The desert floor here is coated with a dark, rust-colored layer of iron oxide pebbles called desert varnish. To create the lines, workers painstakingly removed these topmost stones, exposing the lighter, sand-colored earth beneath. The contrast creates stark, glowing contours visible from miles away. But simple doesn't mean easy. Some glyphs required removing thousands of tons of rock, all hauled away in baskets or rolled aside by hand. The straight lines, some running arrows straight for miles, were likely plotted using wooden stakes and ropes, with alignments checked by sighting along mountain peaks on the horizon. Curves and spirals demanded even greater precision, possibly achieved by rotating ropes around central pivot points like a giant compass. Then there's the question of why. Unlike temples or tombs, the Nazca lines serve no obvious practical purpose. Theories abound: celestial calendars mapping star positions, ritual pathways for ceremonial walks, or even landing strips for extraterrestrials, a notion popularized by 20th century speculation but dismissed by scholars. The most compelling explanation ties them to water. In a region where rain might fall once a decade, the Nazca likely viewed underground aquifers as sacred. Many lines converge around natural water sources, and the animal glyphs, like the hummingbird, associated with rain in Andean lore, may have been offerings to summon life-giving moisture. Some researchers suggest the act of creating the lines itself was a form of worship, the labor a communal prayer etched into the earth, the most haunting detail. These glyphs weren't meant for human eyes, at least not from ground level. From the nearby foothills, the lines dissolve into indecipherable scratches. Only when viewed from the air does their grandeur snap into focus, as if the Nazca were sending a message to gods who soared above. And in a twist of irony, those gods turned out to be us. Today, buzzing prop planes carry awestruck tourists over the same designs, their shadows skimming across shapes that have outlasted empires. The Nazca couldn't have known we'd ever take flight, yet their work endures as a challenge. Look closer. The earth is whispering. From the pyramids piercing the desert sky to the jungle-choked temples whispering forgotten prayers, these 30 ancient megastructures share one undeniable truth. Human ingenuity has always outrun the limits of its tools. Think about that for a moment. Every block of Machu Picchu's mortarless walls, every ton of stone dragged to Sacsayhuaman, every chisel stroke that brought Ellora's gods to life, all of it achieved with nothing but muscle, mind, and a stubborn refusal to call anything impossible. What unites these marvels isn't just precision, though the Great Pyramid's near-perfect cardinal alignment or the Parthenon's earthquake-defying columns certainly make modern engineers sweat its purpose. These weren't vanity projects, they were declarations to the gods to rival kingdoms to time itself. The Inca shaped mountains to honor the earth, the Maya turned temples into celestial clocks, and the Nabateans carved Petra's treasury as a love letter to trade and power. Each culture, separated by oceans and centuries, arrived at the same revelation. If you want to touch eternity, build something that outlasts you. Yet the real magic lies in the human hands behind these stones. The unnamed workers who hauled Easter Island's moai with ropes and rhythm, the laborers who painted Karnak's columns in colors bright enough to blind the sun, the artisans who polished Darinkuyu's tunnels smooth enough to echo whispers across millennia. We may never know their names, but their legacy is everywhere, in the shadow of a Roman aqueduct, in the echo of a step inside Borobudur, in the way the Nazca lines still dare us to look up and wonder. So tell me, which of these ancient marvels left you breathless? Was it the sheer audacity of the Colossus of Rhodes or the quiet genius of the Hanging Gardens irrigation? The cosmic precision of Chichen Itza's serpent shadow or the underground defiance of Darinkuyu's hidden city? Drop your pick in the comments. I'd love to hear which structures sparked your curiosity. And if these feats of ancient ingenuity left you awestruck, don't forget to like and subscribe. We've only scratched the surface of history's greatest mysteries, and there are plenty more wonders waiting to be uncovered. Until next time, keep looking up, down, and beyond. The past isn't done surprising us yet.